For many people, when you mention the history of the human species, their minds may stretch back only a few thousand years, perhaps to the Great Pyramids of Giza, or to the ancient Greeks. Some may even consider more ancient civilizations like the Sumerians, or those groups who were responsible for the beginning of agriculture, and the archaeological site at Göbekli Tepe, dated to around 9000 BC. Still, others may imagine groups of hunter-gatherers which spread out over the planet during the late Pleistocene, hunting megafauna such as woolly rhinoceros and mammoth, and competing with megacarnivores like cave lions, dire wolves, and saber-toothed cats. The cave paintings that some of these groups have left for us have even helped us to reconstruct the morphology of now extinct animals. Although the beginning of agriculture marks a key event in the rise of civilization, that only happened about 10,000 years ago. Our species of hominin, Homo sapiens, was around for at least a whopping 190,000 years before that. Even more fascinating still is that in the period of time our species has existed, there was also at least 5 other hominin species who inhabited the Earth as well. Some of these different hominin species our ancestors met as they migrated out of Africa, through the Levant and into Eurasia, Europe, and the Far East. Where did those other species of human go? Why are we the only ones left? What do we know about their extinctions? Let's start by looking at Homo erectus, which persisted on the island of Java until between 115,000 and 108,000 years ago. This hominin was around for a very long time, about 1.8 million years. We first discovered fossils of Homo erectus in Indonesia in the late 19th century. Their name, Homo erectus, literally means upright human. It is likely that the ancestors of modern humans, perhaps Homo heidelbergensis, descended from a population of Homo erectus in Africa, but there is some disagreement, and we're not exactly sure. Homo erectus was the first hominin to migrate out of Africa, hence why the first fossils we discovered of them were in Indonesia. The species has often been characterized as being rather archaic because of its low brow ridge and relatively small brain case compared to modern humans. Like modern humans, though, they were rather large, standing between 5 and 6 feet tall, and were completely bipedal. And they were incredibly successful as a species. In fact, some scientists argue that Homo erectus must have even been seafaring, because they were able to reach the island of Flores near Indonesia between 900,000 and a million years ago, which would have required traveling over the open ocean. And more recently, they reached islands in the Mediterranean, like Crete. To those scientists, if Homo erectus was capable of making ships and traveling over the ocean, we should also expect that they at least had some form of language, even if it was less complex than our own. We don't have any evidence that modern humans met with erectus as we left Africa, but we do know that as their species' last populations were dying out on the island of Java, modern humans were already proliferating in Africa. Another species, commonly referred to as the hobbit human, but scientifically known as Homo floresiensis, was discovered on the island of Flores during excavations in Ling Block Cave between 2001 and 2004. Individuals of this species were indeed small, with females reaching heights of about 3.5 feet tall and weighing less than 70 pounds at adulthood. These humans had relatively small brains, but despite that used hand tools, were successful hunters, and lived alongside predators such as giant Komodo dragons. Homo floresiensis fossils date to between 100 and 60,000 years ago. Initially, there was controversy over whether the species actually did represent a different taxon, or if the fossil remains were just individuals suffering from a growth disorder. But now scientists believe that the fossils are indeed representative of a new species. In 2019, another new species of hominin was described from Southeast Asia, but specimens of this species were discovered in Callao Cave in the Philippines. Homo luzonensis was present on the island of Luzon more than 50,000 years ago, and perhaps as long as 700,000 years ago, because although fossils have not been found which are that old, there is evidence of humans in the region dating back to that time. The fossils found at Callao Cave include phalanges, teeth, and a femur. The features of the phalanges of the species show their hands and feet to be intermediate between those of hominins and australopithecines, and that may indicate Homo luzonensis was more adept at climbing than other hominins. Homo luzonensis existed on an island east of the Wallace Line, Luzon, so it is unclear how they first arrived there. Importantly, the fact that they existed removed from other hominins or their relatives may have allowed them to adapt some of the features which seem more like australopithecines than other, more modern humans. Homo neanderthalensis is perhaps the best known non-sapient hominin, and our closest relative in the family tree. This species existed from 400,000 years ago to around 40,000 years ago. They were shorter than modern humans but more robust, which was an adaptation to living in the cold climates of Europe and Eurasia that persisted until the end of the Pleistocene. And they had very large brains, which may be unsurprising because their common ancestor with Homo sapiens existed as recently as 300 to 700,000 years ago. Neanderthals were the first species in the Homo genus to make and wear clothing, and despite going extinct around 40,000 years ago, we know that our ancestors occupied parts of Western Asia and perhaps Europe at the same time as they did. Scientists have been able to gather DNA from more than 12 Neanderthal individuals, and what that data shows is that Neanderthals and modern humans actually interbred on multiple occasions. In fact, modern non-African humans contain between 1 and 3% Neanderthal DNA. That number is significant because if the interactions had only taken place once or a few times, we would expect the percentage of DNA in modern humans to have drifted to a smaller or greater number over the thousands of years since the introgression took place. It is because that percentage remains relatively fixed in non-African human populations that scientists believe is a good indication of multiple reproductive events. Moreover, a paper published in 2015 looked at the genome of a human who lived from 37 to 42,000 years ago in Romania and found that the individual had a Neanderthal ancestor as recently as 4 to 6 generations before. Neanderthals weren't just dumb cavemen. They reproduced with modern humans, they made and wore clothing, they used sophisticated tools, and they made symbolic art like cave paintings probably, and even potentially musical instruments. The Djibouti flute, discovered in 1995 in Slovenia, was made from a cave bear's femur bone, and it dates to about 43,000 years ago, and some researchers believe it's actually a Neanderthal artifact. I'll leave a link below to a YouTube video where you can actually hear an exact replica of the flute be played. In the summer of 2010, researchers excavating Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia discovered tooth fragments and a finger bone, in addition to advanced stone tools and a stone bracelet. Using the finger bone, they were able to sequence the nuclear genome of the species and determine that they had actually uncovered a new species of hominin, which we now call the Denisovans, after the cave where they were discovered. Because there is still not a type specimen for this species, there's not yet a Latin species name given, so for now, it's just the Denisovans. From the DNA sequencing analyses, we know that like the Neanderthals, the Denisovans also interbred with modern human populations they encountered, and they also interbred with Neanderthals and an even more archaic, unknown species of hominin that could have even been Homo erectus. Interestingly, a variant of the EPAS1 gene, which encodes a genetic transcription factor which regulates cellular hypoxia and has made populations of humans in Tibet and Nepal more adapted to life at high altitude, comes from the Denisovans. The fact that these hominins interbred with ancient humans and that their DNA continues to live on in modern human populations calls into question not only how we view their extinction, but also the biological species concept itself. We don't really know why these other species went extinct, but given that the Denisovans and Neanderthals in particular seem to disappear from the fossil record as modern humans migrate further out of Africa and into their territories, it seems wise to assume that modern humans played a role in their extinctions, either by resource competition or flat-out conflict. Given how we treat other members of our own species, the latter would not be surprising. Still, it is quite intriguing to imagine the Earth, with multiple species of humans existing all at the same time. What must that place have looked like?